Welcome to Conversations with. On this show, my guests and I explore the bumps and triumphs of their journey to extract the gems from their experiences because success leaves clues, and today we turn those clues into billboards for you. I'm your host, Gene Bernier, founder of Peeled Back, speaker and co-active coach, guiding leaders to pursue a life worth living. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 124. Today, my guest is Cara Heck, a pivotal figure in the legacy of Columbia Bottle Depot, a family business now in its third generation. From hands-on roles in customer service to HR leadership, Cara's journey with the business has been comprehensive. With a distinct focus on improving employment practices and community involvement, Columbia Bottle Depots earned significant recognition, clinching the Family Enterprise of the Year in 2019 and the City of Kelowna's Champion for the Environment Award in 2020. As Cara looks forward, she envisions the legacy continuing with the next generation. Cara, thank you so much for being on the show. And those words definitely do not do you justice. That was pared down. There's a lot of great things that you guys have been going through as you've been on this journey. So let's start from the beginning.
Okay. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, likewise. And the one big thing for people that are listening is I haven't had somebody that's been part of a third generational family business on the show before. And to me, that is such a pivotal, important conversation to have. I believe, Cara, you shared a stat that family businesses, only 12% ever actually make it to the third generation.
Yeah, we've been a part of family enterprise and some of these family business organizations. And yeah, the stats are pretty shocking. And our family business just went through the process of succession from generation two to generation three. We're grateful to be where we are and we know all the work that it takes. But yeah, we're very happy. Our generations in our business are a little bit blurred to some degree because generation one and generation two kind of worked together at the same time and started the business together. But
Mm,
yes, my grandparents have been involved, my parents, and now my siblings and I.
that's really awesome. Well, let's dig into your story with the business and what that's meant for your growth. And I know as well, you're a community leader. You've been part of the JCs, a senator. You've done a lot of things in this leadership capacity and putting yourself out there. So, what has that journey been like for you as part of the third generation coming into the business, doing all the things that you've done with your extracurricular, and how that's also helped shape the business? There's a lot there to decompress, but
Our family business, in a lot of ways, has always been the sixth member of our family. It's been a part of every discussion, family dinners, family events, that kind of thing. So it's always been a part of our world. Both my brothers and I started out with positions just as high school jobs to make some extra money, get us through that kind of thing. And then it supported me through going to university and getting my degree. And then from there, I transitioned into full-time work in the business. And as I was growing and changing in my capabilities, my position in the company changed too. So as you mentioned, I started out just front-end customer service and then went into managing locations and then more of an HR focus. And yeah, I've grown throughout the years along with the business.
so was that always on your roadmap that you were like, I'm going to be taking over this company?
I think in some ways, I think it was always a part of the conversation. I think succession was always the ideal for where our family wanted to go. But it comes with challenges. So at times, you do want to throw in the towel. You do want to take a different approach, especially when those family relations get tested. And yeah, there were moments that I think many of us, my siblings, my parents, looked at alternate options. But ultimately, yeah, succession has always been in the background for sure.
That's interesting. Are you open to diving into some of the challenges? You don't have to be the specifics on the challenges, but navigating those challenges, because it's one thing to navigate challenges with your boss and your coworkers. It's a whole nother thing when this business is the sixth family member coming to every table and those challenges there's no escape from them. What was that
Yeah,
like as growing up in that, getting used to that? And I guess the contrast is, what was it like before and navigating that to where it is now and how you guys have learned to navigate those?
Yeah, it can be very challenging. I mean, you're talking about coworkers, like when my brothers and I were just coworkers. You're talking about coworkers that know all of the buttons to push, all of the things that kind of aggravate you, or there's all this past history as siblings that kind of gets dragged into the day to day. And also parent child kind of challenges and expectations, because as parents, they have expectations of you as their child that might not be the same for other employees or coworkers. So, yeah, there's definitely some challenges that you have to walk through. And that's where we really look to some of those outside resources. So at one time it was called CAFE, Canadian Association of Family Enterprise. Now it's FEX, some of these outside family business organizations to get an idea of how to navigate some of that, some of the resources that we could access to mitigate some of those challenges. And it's really interesting because when you're in the midst of your own family business, you think, oh my God, we're really not doing well. This is awful. Why are we having all of these challenges? Nobody else is having these challenges. But then you get to be a part of these organizations and you very quickly learn that all family businesses are experiencing these challenges. And the topics might be slightly different, but it's all the same. And
Right.
yeah,
Was
so
being
we
part of those associations something that's been part of this from generation 1 on to generation 3, or is this a new piece that between the transition from generation 2 to your generation has been brought in to move that through a little bit smoother?
Yeah, it was really the transition from generation 2 to generation 3 that we started looking at those resources, and they really had a big impact for us. When things were generation 1, generation 2, our business was much smaller. We started out as a one location bottle and recycling depot. In the early stages, we actually only took the old brown stubby beer bottles. Some people will remember them. But yeah, it was a very small business. And so the challenges weren't the same. And also, my dad was the only one of his siblings that kind of entered the business and took part in it. So there wasn't the same challenges going from generation 1 to generation 2 as there was from generation 2 to generation 3.
That's an interesting contrast going from like one sibling in generation 2 coming into now handing it off to 3 siblings. What
Yeah.
did you find was the challenge that came up with that as trying to share that across the 3 of you and negotiating with your father about how to bring this third party in and the importance of it and being able to be I guess you'd mentioned here is there was a bit of an aha moment of going, "Oh, we're not the only ones dealing with this. There's others."
Yeah, I think we were really lucky because my parents were quite open to utilizing those other resources. I will say it did take all of us a little bit of time to get on board because some of those resources do come at quite an expense. But first, it's, oh, do we really need to pay this? Do we really need these extra costs in the business? And once we started working through them, we really came to realize the value. Everybody was really open to utilizing those resources. Most of the time, there were
Yeah.
times where people pulled away from the process, but yeah, from that perspective, we are lucky.
And how did you guys as a group then handle that experience where people may have been pulling away and trying to meet them where they're at and work through that? Because it's like you say, it's not just the boardroom, but it's the family table too that has to bring all this in.
Yeah, we had some times where, one sibling or another found the process really challenging and wanted to step away from the process of succession. I think that in the beginning, we thought it was like we had a 5-year plan. We thought, okay, 5 years. We knew it was going to take some time. So we thought that'll give us time to work through it. And then we started in on the second 5-year plan and just extended out. But we also had to go through and put some boundaries in for us as a family. One of the big things that we learned was putting family back into family business. So shifting the focus away from everything being on the business to also just having strictly family time. This actually really came up through our spouses. So my siblings and my spouse, they were at all these family events and every conversation was about the family business. And they were saying, can't we talk about something else? We just decided that when it was family time, that the business was put to the side. We didn't have those conversations. Or if we did have them, it was the first 5, 10 minutes and then we moved on from there.
It's almost like uninviting that sixth member from the family dinner, being like, "You gotta find your own place to go eat today."
Yeah, it was still a significant factor for all of us, but there's just a time and a place, and that wasn't the time and place to have those conversations.
How did that impact the succession once that kind of realization came to the head going, "We can actually put some distance between this business and our family. Yes, we're a family that run this business, but that's not necessarily has to be everything."
I think it was really interesting because I think we all saw the value of just strictly family time. One person that was really impacted by it all was my mother, who didn't work day to day in the business, never has. My parents decided a long time ago if they worked together, they would likely be divorced. So they decided they wouldn't work together. But also, when our business was in the early stages, my mom worked outside of the business to provide that stable income, the health benefits, some of those other factors that were challenging at the time.
Mm,
And so she didn't work day to day in the business. And so she really played um, what they call the CEO role, but it's the chief emotional officer. So she
I
was the
love
one
that.
she was the one that all of us went to when we had issues or problems in the business. She was the one, the voice that everyone went to. And she just got overloaded with all of these things. And I think bared the emotional load of all of that.
Mm.
So I think putting some of those boundaries in was good for all of us, but especially for her.
That's an interesting insight to know that, first off, the chief emotional officer, love that title, but also that comes with it is quite the burden of having to be present and hold all those things. And those are all loved ones. Then you're then having to navigate how to handle each side of these perspectives that are coming in and wearing I think understand why when the boundaries were set, it must have been like, thank you.
And for her, it's all these different voices, but we're all her children. So
Yeah.
it's where do I draw those boundaries and whose side do I take in this? And it's very challenging for her as a mother, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. This other place is you mentioned that when the company got started, it was a one location, it was only doing one set of like glass stubby bottles. I remember those bottles. And now it's grown to quite a
Yes.
lot. You've got multiple locations all over Kelowna, one or more in Kamloops, and as well, the operations itself has evolved a lot in the last 10 years.
Yeah, our
Talk
business
about
is,
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, our business has truly grown over the years. As you mentioned, we have multiple locations and the number of staff members has grown by a lot. We went from the business employing my grandparents in the beginning to now we have 50 to 60 employees across the board. And yeah, it's definitely added some challenges. And then in addition to that, due to some of the labor challenges, finding employees, that kind of thing, we have opted to automate some of our depots. We used to be customer hand sorting, that kind of thing. And now it's a very different process when the customers come into the depots.
Yeah, and I love that being able to drop my bags off and let it all get sorted. I'd love to dig into where that push came from, going from a very manual process now to some of these stores. Like you can walk up, just shove your bottles into the machine and it counts. Like that's a big, bold step to take in an evolution in operating the business. So where did how did that come about and how did you guys work together to make the decisions to do some of these? Because I'm sure some of it was a bit on the cutting edge of pushing the company into its next phase.
Yeah, we've always been pretty progressive in our approach to running our businesses. We're always keeping up to date in many ways, up to date on the regulation, new technology, all those kinds of things. But it just got to the point where we were challenged to keep up with the volume that we were getting in beverage containers, and also customers have shifted. You know what they were looking for. Ideally, one of the things was convenience, like you mentioned, our drop and go program. So we had to look to other means of handling things. And so we looked to automate our depots a few years ago. We started with our largest depot in Kelowna on Kent Road. And yeah, we just knew that we had to shift how we were doing things just to keep up. And our Kent Road depot was actually the first high volume depot in the province to put the automation in. And we Our Dease Road location was the second location to put it in after Kent. And we worked with Tomro, which is the automation company that put it in, as well as with Return It, which is the producer responsibility organization that's responsible for the non-alcoholic beverage containers to implement the system and refine the process for the technology. So we worked through that process with them, and since then, I believe there's about 11 depots in the province now that have put in some version of the automation. Some have chosen to only put back-end systems in to help with that convenient drop and go kind of program, and
Right.
others have put full systems in like we chose to do.
What was the driving factor? Obviously, then, if you were the first and second in British Columbia to set up this level of automation in your depots, what were some of the challenges that you faced as going through and basically being the trailblazer, going, no one else has gone this, there's no recipe playbook for it, we're going to make our own?
Yeah, the first summer that we put it in at our Kent Road depot, it was a very rough summer for us. We were very challenged as a family. We were working 12 plus hours a day. We were filling the gap with employees that we had some transition in employees around that time as well. So it was a very challenging summer. And my mother, who I mentioned doesn't normally work day to day in our business, actually came in and helped out as well just to get us through. And yeah, it wasn't just us working through the kinks of adding the automation into our operation, but it was also Tomra, the company that makes the machines, as well as the pro kind of working through their systems as well. It was very challenging, but I would say worthwhile in the end. It made a huge difference.
Right. What was it like as you were in the midst of those challenges, and how did you guys come together? Or I guess maybe, yeah, I hear that you were all working lots of hours. So I'm going to lead the witness and assume there was like a coming together of it. But even in those states, even when you're coming together, there's still, you mentioned challenges and stress. How did you guys face that? And what did you learn now as a team about going into the unknown and this evolution of growth? What is now meant for the company?
At the time, like you say, it was very challenging for us as a family. So again, I think it really reinforced the value of that family time and still through that challenging summer, looking for those moments of family time. And I think, as you mentioned, it was very stressful. We had moments where we didn't always get along, or we had moments where we didn't always agree on the best route through some of those challenges. So it really put a strain on us relationship wise as siblings and a family group. We had to manage that and make sure that we still had those moments of family time to reestablish those connections. As a business, though, I think it was a huge jump forward for us, and I don't think we regret it in any way. It made a big difference for us. And we had some customers who were very concerned when we put it in initially because they thought we were getting rid of employees by putting in automation. When in fact, we actually didn't get rid of any employees or terminate any employees. We kept the staff that we had. But what it allowed us to do was to put more volume through per employee to keep up with the additional volume and beverage containers that we were receiving.
That's fascinating as well, is that here's an example of putting automation in, increase the volume, and allowed you to continue to keep the staff. And imagine that then helped you guys rethink about how you utilize that staff as well.
Yeah, and it also allowed us to increase the wages that we were paying our staff. A lot of people seem to have the perception that at bottle and recycling depots, employees make minimum wage, which I can assure you is not the case. We haven't paid minimum wage in a very long time. We look to pay a fair wage for the work as well as benefits and all those things. We very much value our employees. But through the transition, we were also able to increase the wages because it had shifted the job and
Right.
allowed us to put more volume through per employee.
Mm. And it more volume, same level of employees as is obviously it affects the bottom line, but now allows you guys to grow and view this in other ways.
Yeah.
Going back to the struggles and when you guys were having disagreements or challenges about coming to alignment on a decision, how did you how did you work through that as a group? How did you decide how are we going to break the lock on a decision?
I think over the years, that is one of the things that we've really had to grow and change with. In the beginning, the decisions were very much made by my father. He ran things, made his own decisions, and we all moved forward. As the years went on, we looked to more of a team-based decision-making process. We're at the point now where we have once a week operational meetings, and we include our controller, our HR manager, other outside voices to help provide some perspective as well. And we make most of our decisions through that team environment. Ultimately, I guess there are some that are made by my father or myself in the leadership position, but we do a lot of them through the team.
Right. And was that something that came out through all this, or was there like a bit of a growth to building up this team? And maybe there's a component of building up the trust within each other and within the team to be able to make these decisions when you're going from a single decision maker now distributing that to the group.
Yeah, I think it was finding the right people for the positions and having that level of comfort and trust to include them in those decisions. And I think as our business grew and we became multi location and some of these added challenges crept in, we just had to find a different approach. And this was the way to do it, just because one person just can't keep up with it all.
Right. For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. So as you've grown now, you've grown with and how you make decisions as a team. You've been able to now separate the business from the family a little bit more and have made this transition. Is the succession for to generation three complete then? Have you completed that cycle? And how long did that process take from going, this is what we want to do. The three of us will succeed. Now what?
I would say we hadn't officially decided that was the way it was going to be up until the last minute. We had a family trust that was built in, and there was a deadline that had to be wrapped up by. And I think that, if I'm being honest, that forced some of the decisions.
Mm,
And I think as a result, there was some hurt feelings just because of the timing and how some of those decisions were announced or put out. I We certainly went through a huge process. We were working on it for 10 plus years, but it doesn't mean that it's all perfect at the end either. It certainly still has challenges. You're dealing with family, you're dealing with business. There's all these feelings and emotions wrapped into everything. So there's multi layers to it, and it's just very challenging.
yeah. And it sounds like then you're still working through some of those challenges and smoothing it out.
Yeah, so the paperwork is signed, the shareholders agreements, those kinds of things. But yeah, as far as the emotional side of it or the family side of it or the falling out of some of that, we're still working through some of that. We've had a counselor that we've worked with over the years to help address some of these things. She's been a part of our succession process for quite a while. And so she's helping us navigate some of that at this point for sure.
So I hear actually as a group, you've brought in a lot of outside resources to be able to help navigate this and do this with like a fullness, like respecting that there's a process and there's other people who've gone through what do you call FEX here in Canada, and as well, including counselors and mental health support and emotional support is like, those are really critical. You'd mentioned, yes, the paperwork is done, but that's like almost the easiest piece out of all of it when it's all said and done. Yeah, getting the lawyers and everything can feel expensive on the top, but like working through this and continuing to make your headway and work as a team and reform as this new team, the succeeding team, that's like a lifetime of work and choosing to continue to show up to put the work into it because that work is never really done.
No, yeah, it just keeps, going, and it just shifts, and the conversation shifts a little bit, but yes, the resources that we have access to have certainly made a difference to help, us navigate through the process for sure. We had family business advisors that we worked with initially, and through them, they made recommendations as to other resources that they felt that we would benefit from, one of which was this counselor that we are working with, and it's interesting because when the resource was initially the counselor was originally suggested, it was in regards to my relationship with one of my brothers, and that was the piece that the counselor was helping us work through. And over time, it's shifted from that to now it's my parents and I working through some pieces of this succession process. Yeah, we've even the resources that we've accessed have started as one way and then just shifts over time.
And knowing that being able to reach out to that and the value of that external support, I imagine that will impact how you guys make decisions and continue to reach out and bring other resources in as the dynamics change, as the business grows and everything along those lines. There's almost a little bit of a comparison to what putting in the automation going, we don't know how this is going to go. There's going to be some rough parts. And then on the outside, we're going to be able to do a lot more with it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And as well, I in the bio, there was a component of involving the business in community building and other reaches. How's that integrated with it? I know that you're part of JCI, you're a senator, you've done a lot of community stuff within that organization and leadership building and experiences. How has that impacted or influenced what the business does and around those factors?
I think community involved an important factor for us. I think the reality of our business is that it's not always viewed in a positive light. People kind of think, oh, bottle depots, the homeless in the bottle depot get painted with the negative brush at times. And so we really thought it was important to put another perspective out there. So community involvement has been really big for us. One of the first things that as a company that we got involved in was we had a segment of customers that wanted to recycle their containers, but just really didn't want to deal with the hand sorting and some of those things when we were a more manual system. And so we started working with Pathways Ability Society in Kelowna. They provide employment opportunities for challenged individuals, people with diverse abilities. And we collect donations at each of our locations, but they also have an on-site sorting team at our Kent Road depot. So the customers can donate their beverage containers at any of our locations, and then the Pathways team sort and process those containers. And then all the funds that come in from those containers go to support Pathways and their programs. Yeah, that's been a significant program for us. It's been a really important working relationship for us. We really enjoy the Pathways team at our Kent Road location, and really value that relationship. It was a win. It gave our customers somewhere reliable that they can make these donations to that was
Mhm.
accounted for the funds and that we as a family felt comfortable for working with. But also these funds are important to Pathways and it's enabled them to keep many of their clients employed. So it's been positive.
That sounds like a great opportunity that society gets more revenue because of it or access to different streams of revenue through the bottle and people going, I don't want to sort this, give it to them and being able to involve them in that whole process. What, how did you identify that as the group to work with?
At the time, we didn't have the automation in place to do the sorting and processing, and we just didn't have the staff available to provide that component of it. That was the challenge that we had. And
Right.
so we just saw it as an opportunity to employ the Pathways clients. And then also there was the aspect of having a reliable organization that was accountable for the funds that we
Mhm.
as a family felt comfortable promoting and working with.
So I hear a lot of win-wins there that not only are they helping their clients then have potentially meaningful employment or employment experience by working through the system at your locations. They also get revenue for it and the ability to continue to serve and do what they need to do within our community.
Yeah, for sure. It was the best solution for everybody.
Did they approach you or was this something that you went out and hunted for?
We actually approached them to begin with, just because we had these customers that wanted to do the right thing, and we were just challenged. So
Right.
we were looking for a resource, and we just felt that they were probably the best fit for us.
How did you come making the decision on them? Because obviously there's more than enough societies and foundations out there. How did you find this one? As I want to help shine the light to other entrepreneurs and business owners that may be able to do similar things. Is what was the process behind going there? That's them. This is how we're going to make this decision.
I think it was a case of us reaching out, understanding what their programs were, having the conversations about whether this would fit for them as well. I think in the beginning, there was a bit of reluctance on their side because they weren't sure that there was going to be enough beverage containers coming in to warrant setting up the program. They didn't have an understanding of what that was going to look like.
Right.
So, we had to work through some of those things, but I think it was just, yeah, reaching out, getting an understanding of how they run things on their end, the comfort level for us as a family. And we did look at a few different resources or opportunities, but this is the one that we just felt the most comfortable with.
Right. Yeah, and being able to provide that win. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for sharing the bit behind that. I've mentioned it now a couple times is that you've been part of other associations and organizations like JCI. How has that impacted you as a leader and that how you've been showing up within that and your growth over the last decade?
I think it's been critical for me, to be honest. I was a very shy individual and I was a somebody who tended to be okay doing the work, but I didn't want to be at the forefront. I didn't want to be leading the way on things. And so JC's was a really big game changer for me. Some of my closest friends have come out of that organization. And it was just a very supportive environment and very encouraging and outside of my comfort zone, take on some new challenges. And it also led me to access new resources. So, through the individuals that I was a part of the organization, when they encouraged me to reach out and to other resources, or they themselves, some of them are coaches or, those kinds of things. So, it just opened up opportunities for me. And the other thing is, I started working on the boards at the local level, then I went to the regional level, the national level, and it just helped build up my confidence. And I just felt more comfortable. I felt more comfortable speaking up. One of the people that I worked on the national board with, he said, I was a little confused when you were initially on the board because you didn't say too much. But then he said, once you got comfortable and started speaking up, I could really see the importance of you being there. I think that really boosted me. And yeah, I really felt just more comfortable in that leadership role. And it really translated into our family business too.
So there's an opportunity there when you stepped out of doing just you didn't step out of the business, but stepping into this organization allowed you to test and experience and experiment with these things that maybe you felt uncomfortable or just weren't prepped for in the business or had the opportunities. But because of having that outside experience, it actually enabled a much more fuller business experience for you. And I imagine impacts your life. You said a bunch of your friends are all from there, which I know as well as being part of that organization. You do definitely step out of your comfort zone and get to experience new pieces of yourself.
I think too that it allowed me to get outside of our family, and this is the way we've always done it, so this is the way we should do it going forward. It allowed me to see new perspectives and new opportunities or different ways of doing things, and so I was able to bring that back to our family business, so I think our business benefited overall as well.
That's incredible to be able to share that and see that and how then it continues to go and impact all those places.
Yeah, for
We're getting close to our time before I'm looking at it going, "Oh, do I have another question?" But I imagine that's gonna run its way over time here. So I wanna be respectful of your time, Kara. Thank you so much for diving into all the places that you have today with us. I know that this is gonna be a very valuable amount of insights that others can share. Before we get off to our last question, this is a time for you to not be humble, to brag about what's happening and any opportunities that you wanna share through yourself and Columbia Bottle Depot.
As you mentioned, we've won some awards over the last few years, so we're pretty proud of that. I think sometimes bottle depots or recycling services get overlooked in some of those things. So it was very nice for those organizations to recognize us. And also, we make a significant impact to waste diversion in Kelowna, especially where our three main locations are. I'll share a stat with you. On an annual basis, through our three locations, we recycle about 71 million beverage containers on it. We're keeping that out of the landfill, and that doesn't include all the batteries, small appliances, all of those other items. We're pretty proud of the work we do and the impact that it has on the community.
Yeah, It's not a small number, 71 million in just in this region. That's phenomenal.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great work to you and the team to have built up to what it has become today and to what it will be in the future.
Yeah, we're pretty excited. We have the next generation kind of entering the business. It's high school jobs, that kind of stuff at this point, but we're excited to see what the future brings for sure.
That's awesome. Speaking of the future, I've got one last question before I let you go and we wrap up the show. We're going to jump into my time machine. We're going to head off into the future by 10 years. When we open the door, there's future you. What does she say thank you to you for?
I think I would say thank you to me for being open minded, taking the opportunities that are available, not limiting myself to staying within my comfort zone. And yeah, just taking the opportunities as they come.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And to everybody else, thank you for listening or watching wherever you're joining us today. Make sure to follow us on YouTube and all the podcast platforms. Until next episode, my name is Gene, and this has been Conversations with. Oh, one last thing. It's the legal language. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional.